And thank you all for being here. My name is Alice Carey. I'm an architect with Placework. We're architects and planners right here in Portsmouth. Many of our staff live in Portsmouth. We work in Portsmouth, but obviously, and we take advantage of a lot of these facilities and programs in the rec department. So we're just thrilled to be part of this process and getting to know our community really well. We have on our team experts in recreational planning, Horsley Witten. I should also mention I have Ken Fair from our office joining us tonight, and I'll let the Horsley Witten folks introduce themselves, but just wanted to extend our thanks and open the lines of communication to you even after this evening. Participate. I'm really glad you're here. Right.
Thanks, Alice. Craig Ferraro, I'm senior planner with the Horsley Witten Group in our Providence office. With me tonight is Billy Baker, who runs our New Hampshire office, and Jeff Davis, who is my colleague in the Providence office. So yeah, tonight is really about reporting our findings from our community outreach efforts, but also from some of the research that we did with the National Recreation and Parks Association, which we utilized to set some of the standards that we're trying to build off of. So we had summary of findings, and then after the presentation, we'll do a question and answer period. And then we have our board set up in the, I don't know what that's called, but then the mezzanine. And we'll have our staff at those boards. And essentially, and I'll go through this at the end of the presentation, but essentially there are some boards that we're asking you to prioritize by dot voting. There are some boards that we're asking you to provide input on a sticky note because they're preliminary recommendations. And then there are some boards that have both. And like I said, I'll go through those before we actually head out to the gallery. But the gallery session, after the Q&A, the gallery session will be sort of self-regulated. You go to where you want to go. If you want to hit all the stations, that'd be great. We also have a vision board out there that won't be manned, and I'll go over that at the end as well. But I do want to let folks know that the boards after tonight, the presentation will be posted on the project webpage for folks who couldn't come tonight so that they can view it. And then we're going to post all of the boards that you're visiting tonight will be downstairs in the lobby for the next week. So if your neighbors or your family or your friends couldn't come tonight and you want them to weigh in, they can come to the center on regular business hours, and they'll be able to provide their input on the boards as well. So tonight's meeting is really about a summary of data collection efforts, community engagement efforts, and then all the various analyses that we performed. So to date, we had an online community survey that was available to the general public. We had an athletic facility users survey that was had a specific targeted audience, so it was coaches, administrators, and associated personnel who utilized the facilities in the town. We had our first public workshop at the end of May of this year. We developed an inventory spreadsheet coordination between Alice's firm and my firm with the Department of Parks and Greenery, with Todd and his folks at Parks and Recreation, and also with the school district facilities director. The Age-Friendly Portsmouth document assessment came out. That was done by the Rockingham Planning Commission. We took some information from that as well. That addresses senior citizens in the community. Field use analysis is not quite complete yet, but we're able to make some statements from that, some realizations from that. One of our big pieces that for our analysis purposes and our research is from the National Recreation and Parks Association. They have a whole suite of parks and recreation metrics that communities utilize to establish a baseline of where the community should be at, and then where the community should be at today, and then you can project those out. And you'll see some of the tables in the presentation later on, and I'll explain those as we go through. But the National Recreation Parks Association puts all this information together, and they provide high and low and median numbers for communities to almost like do a gut check of where they're at and where they should be. And then we have existing and future municipal plans that we evaluated, and then we had several coordination interviews and meetings. We met with Parks and Greenery Department, and we met with the school facilities director as well to get their input. Because it's not just Parks and Rec sites or town-owned sites, it's school sites that folks are using as well. So we took our preliminary findings and recommendations and we sort of assembled them into these 6 categories. So that we could, this sort of mirrors the way that we did our outreach to people, it mirrors our surveys. It should also mirror our final report. So we have information, communication protocols, programming, facilities, maintenance and stewardship, connectivity, mobility, and amenities. And we'll go through each of these different categories one at a time. So information, communication, and protocols. So to start out, I think it's a great way to start out that we had a lot of feedback from residents that the Park and Recreation Department under Todd's recent acquired leadership has seen huge improvements as far as communication and programming, the way that they get information out to folks via social media or with the bulletins that come out, the catalogs. The one thing that we did hear from a lot of folks as well, and from our interviews, was communication was lacking. So communication between sports leagues and organizations and administrators, coaches, and the various different departments in the community. So some of these categories will have recommendations, statements, and then some of them will have a list of prioritized actions that you all and the community at large has already prioritized through the surveys, through the first public workshop, and through feedback that we received. So some of the recommendations, well, first, our overarching goals for information, communication, and protocols, increase communications and create communication, because that really seems what the emphasis is here, what the general need is. So establish an annual meet and greet for sports leagues, organization administrators, coaches, and support staff. With the school district facilities director, with the Parks and Greenery Department, as well as the Parks and Recreation Director, Todd and Todd's department. Folks are saying that when we talk to some folks, that some of the coaches have never met each other, some of the coaches have never met staff. So we're trying to foster an environment where that communication can finally open up. And that really becomes critical when there are significant weather events. Couple of things game and fields need to be closed. Getting that information out to coaches so that they can get that information out to their players and their families, which is a significant undertaking. But also when the fields are closed and they need to stay off. Well. Establish a quarterly by season coordination meeting with the same folks. Program offerings and sports change by season. So I think it's important that, you know, everybody gets the opportunity to meet and greet. Everybody has those face to a voice or face to an email. And then especially, I also forgot to mention, you know, when they have to reschedule a game or a practice and they're calling each other, you know, opening those lines of communication can only facilitate a much smoother process with that. Formalizing protocols for field use, particularly after rain or weather events. Again, I just mentioned that folks need to respect and understand that sometimes fields need to be closed because if you're on them after a significant or a long duration of rain, they're going to tear them up. Ensure that information is made available both in print and online. So we heard this loud and clear from the survey, but we also took this from the age-friendly survey completed by the Rockingham Planning Commission. All different demographics want to see information in all different forms. And then promoting the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The next category is programming. So our overarching goal is to expand program offerings and expand hours of operation. So this is where the National Recreation and Parks Association metrics come into play the first time. They have a list of, they categorize their programming by, and all of the work that they do by the size of the jurisdiction. So because Portsmouth today is population is estimated at 22,192 residents, we went with the less than 20,000 category because the next category up is 50,000 or less. So it really mirrors what we're trying to do here. On the positive side, Todd's department and Todd's staff, the programs that are offered based on national standards are very comparable to what is being offered in the city of Portsmouth today. As far as social themed special events, social events, health and wellness programming, team sports, aquatics, racket sports, and the like. We do have these here because this is the top 5 or 6 from all the different outreach elements that we completed. And this is something that you'll be responding to on the boards outside during the gallery session. We want you to prioritize. So the things that we heard loud and clear over and over again from all the different engagement pieces, the surveys, interviews, as well as the first public workshop. People want more free play options. So less program spaces so that people can just show up at a park on a Saturday morning and they have some space to do whatever they want to do, rather than have it always be programmed and they have to either put their name in or reserve a space. Programming for preschoolers, adults, people with disabilities, coordination with Portsmouth Housing Authority. A lot of folks talked about offering scholarships to youth that come from the Portsmouth Housing Authority. One of their primary barriers to participation and inclusiveness is cost. Extending weekend hours for working families, mostly at indoor facilities. A lot of families who respond to the survey and came to the workshop spoke about, if you have a 2-parent working family, it's difficult to get kids to some of these activities, especially the younger kids. Martial arts programming for adults and empty nesters, establish training opportunities for volunteer coaches. A lot of folks commented about, and I see this in my community in Rhode Island, when my son signs up for flag football, they get everything's great, they get their team, they move the corner line and they show their talent. And then the next email that comes out, they're looking for parent volunteers because they don't have enough coaches. So providing some coaching for some of these coaches who are volunteering and may not have that level of experience. Winter sports offerings, affordable swim lessons, and pickleball lessons in leagues. So this is the second area where the National Recreation and Parks Association comes into play. I do have there's a lot of information here, so I do have some notes, but so essentially, and I'm going to try to walk you through this table. So the National Recreation and Parks Association looks at programming and facilities across the nation. And they have this list for facilities, whether it's less than 20,000, 20,000 to less than 50,000. So I left both of these here because I wanted to show you that, with the estimated population of 22,192 in 2022, we're looking at all the information that comes from the less than 20,000 population in the jurisdiction. These are all the different types of facilities, from playgrounds, basketball courts, and this is just strictly outdoor facilities. Community gardens, swimming pools, soccer fields, skate parks, outdoor ice rinks, pickleball courts. So these are the numbers that we're using. This next column here, this baseline, this is the calculation that we utilized for less than 20,000. And this is what the city should have in place today. So, I'm not going to go through them all, but 11 playgrounds, 7 baseball fields, 8 tennis courts. So then we took the existing inventory, we developed that inventory spreadsheet that I spoke about earlier in the presentation, where we have all the different facilities categorized, all the different users categorized. We also looked at parking and circulation and things like that. So this is where the city should be, and this is where the city is today. So you can see that there are some numbers that are higher than where we should be. There are some numbers that are lower than where we should be. So then this next column, the population, again, has a 22,192 residents as of 2022. So this just takes this column and subtracts this column. So anything that's highlighted in yellow shows a deficiency and shows a demand or a need in the community. And that's just based on NRPA nationwide standards. Those are median standards. So we have to have something that we can base our work off of and base the work that the town pursues for the next 10 years. So anything in yellow is a deficiency. And then we have our needs analysis is intended to have a 10-year planning horizon. So we need to not only look at facilities and programming today, but we need to project that out to 2032 for the next 10 years. So essentially, we're looking at an average annual growth rate of 0.53% for the next 10 years, which yields us just about another 1,000 residents by 2032. There's actually a dip in between that with a slightly lower demographic population. So you'll see that, again, the deficiencies, these are the needs for 2032, so 10 years out. And you'll see that under the needs, most of the numbers are the same because the population hasn't really changed significantly. But again, anything that's in yellow is identified as a deficiency or a need based on NRPA median standards, again, which is what we're utilizing as our baseline to measure everything off. So then looking at the deficiencies, we're short 3 adult softball fields, 1 youth softball field, 2 adult baseball fields, 2 outdoor pools, 2 community gardens, 3 youth soccer fields, 1 adult soccer field, 1 skate park, 1 football field, and 3 outdoor ice rinks. Okay. And again, this will all be in our draft and final report as well. And I know that I just walked you through a ton of information in a short period of time. I'm happy to discuss that after the presentation. So then also, again, still with outdoor facilities, looking at demands and needs. So our athletic facility users survey, there was folks identified the demand for additional fields. They're telling us there's not enough because of the limited sheer number of facilities. There's not enough warm up or practice space for teams. And often there are conflicts that are occurring, especially when there are private sports leagues playing adjacent to school teams and adjacent to rec programming as well. We heard from the public outreach, one of the repetitive themes and priority was that there needs to be more artificial turf fields in the community too. Artificial turf fields, I'm not an expert on that and cannot answer any PFAS questions for you right now. I can certainly get the information back to you. But artificial turf fields essentially have an unlimited playtime on them. So you can get a lot more use out of it versus a natural turf site. We have support the city's open space plan and master plan recommendations. So it's really critical that we are folding in all the other existing municipal documents and all the goals and actions and objectives that are included in those into this plan. Because once this report is finalized, it'll be important that when those plans get updated, that our information gets folded into those plans as well. Showing that consistency across your municipal documents, when there's a funding opportunity in front of the community, it shows that you have vetted these across multiple platforms, multiple demographics, and it gives you a little bit more teeth in the application. Coordination interviews and meetings. So we met with school facilities director and Parks and Greenery, additional fields, capacity to rest fields. So right now they don't have the capacity to rest any fields. So giving fields downtime so that, if it is a damp day and there's a lot of use, being able to let those fields recover a little bit will extend not only the usability of the field, but the conditions as well, and the amount of maintenance that has to go in to keep those updated. And then field use analysis, as I mentioned earlier, the field use analysis is not 100% complete yet. We're still waiting for some data to come in, but we're able to still make some general statements about that. There are a number of fields in the community that are being utilized. So the standard average is 600 to 800 hours per year. In order to maintain those fields in a satisfactory condition, there are maybe 7 or 8 fields that are beyond that usage analysis. So that just reinforces the need for additional facilities. So moving on to indoor facilities. Again, this is from the National Recreation Parks Association. It's a similar situation as far as the setup of the table. These are the different types of facilities that we looked at. We're using the less than 20,000 population of jurisdiction for our calculations. This is our baseline so that we can establish that where are we going, where are we growing from, where do we need to go, where do we need to grow. This is the inventory from our inventory spreadsheet. This is what you need to have, should have based on median standards. This is what you have. 2022 again, the same population numbers, these are the deficiencies. So anything in yellow identifies a deficiency. And then again, it's the same for population 2032, projecting out over that 10-year planning horizon, where you need to have a certain number. And again, they don't really change that significantly because it's only I think it's like a plus or minus 1,000 residents over that 10-year period. But again, these are the deficiencies that are identified. So looking at the deficiencies from the NRPA standards, we have two community centers that were deficient, one senior center, one performance amphitheater, one teen center, and one indoor ice rink.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
So I just noticed that under aquatic center, we have 0. And does our indoor pool count?
The indoor pool does count, but it's not.
She's misreading, I think.
Yeah,
If it's not yellow, there's no deficiency.
I understand, but why is it, I just don't understand why it's 0 and why isn't there a deficiency that we should have 2?
Saying we should have 2, and we do have 2.
We do have, there are two, yeah.
Oh, I
Yep,
get it,
yep.
okay, I can't read it, it's too small for me, yeah.
I have another question. So these baselines, are these recommendations or averages?
These are median averages that are nationwide for a facility, for a Parks and Rec program in a jurisdiction of this size. Those are the typical numbers that would be provided by a Parks and Recreation
It's
facility.
surprising though that a town that size would have 3 indoor ice rinks, 4 arenas.
Yes,
And it's a
Yeah.
small town.
yes.
Yeah,
There are other communities that are in much better positions financially or in more dire situations financially as well. Again, it's intended to be, we need to establish a baseline so that we need to know where we're gonna grow from. So that's why we're utilizing the NRPA standards, because they cover facilities, they cover programming, they cover staffing and things like that. So it's kind of comprehensive. Yes, Brent.
Greg, I also think it's worth mentioning what the definition of recreation center is.
Yes, so recreation centers, including gyms. So right now, it shows that, and thank you for mentioning that. It shows that the city should have 2. The inventory shows that we have 6, and that's because the general definition of a recreation center is an indoor space that includes a gym. So all the school facilities get categorized into that, which is why you're not showing a need right here. Or a need in 2032, 10 years out. But you have to keep in mind that school facilities have limited availability because during the school day, during, an after school programming. So there aren't 6 recreation centers with gyms that are open full-time every day. Yes.
How does this account for? When you're talking about averages, like geographical location, so comparing, Maine to Arizona, like those would have different needs, because Arizona, you have more outdoor time than Maine.
Yep.
And then how did this account for? It's only like publicly owned or publicly accessible versus like private gyms,
Right.
and how does this account for if there's an ice rink in the next town over?
So the NRPA standards are based on publicly owned facilities and not private facilities. We have done an assessment of private facilities. We presented at that first public workshop. I think you did 2 different communities, 2 different adjacent communities to do a comparison of what, so we heard a lot of folks that are saying that they leave Portsmouth and go to adjacent communities because there are other programs, or there's better programming, or there's cheaper programming or better hours. So Alice's firm did that comparable analysis. Do you recall which communities you
We
looked
did
at?
Rochester, we did Dover and Hampton.
Okay.
And I just want to jump in and say that it helps me to think of this analysis less as a like, Craig's telling us now we need all these things. And more that this is one component of what we're doing as part of this study. There's kind of figuring out how we're measuring up to other communities nationwide. Illuminates a lot of things for us, but so does the input. So it's all kind of part of the consideration. And so where something like, if it's telling us we need 3 pools and there are private ones that are serving our community very well, that kind of helps us sort of explain away a deficiency in that, but as an example, so it's not as if this is just spitting out what we need to do. It's only one piece of the picture.
I have, similar to what Adrian was saying, it's sort of definition, it's all things that are managed by the rec department, or is it all of the city facilities that are sort of looped into this,
It's schools and rec department.
those two?
Yeah.
Because I'm really curious about where the team center is.
Where there's, what's that? Yeah, times eight. Yes.
Just
Yeah.
curious because
And recognizing that there are
the
varying
definition.
definitions of what a team center comprises. But, and as Alice said, this is, I'm certainly not saying that this is what the city has to do and has to require and has to develop. Again, we need to establish benchmarks. The baseline so that, and we utilize NRPA because those are nationwide standards they have. And these, the standards that we're showing here in this baseline column, those are the median for this size jurisdiction. So there are upper and lower quartile numbers that would scare you if we included those. So, you know, we're just trying to shoot for middle of the road here to see where we kind of measure up and where we need to grow. And that's really just the intent of all of this. So I do want to mention, we have the next slide, which talks about demand and needs. So indoor facilities, demands and needs. From athletics facility users survey, there was identified demand for indoor facilities. I think it was Seacoast Ultimate and the Portsmouth High School cheerleading team are interested in indoor space. There were a host of others as well. But then from our public outreach, our repetitive themes, what we heard for indoor facilities that folks need and desire. An ice rink or arena, a multi-purpose indoor sports complex, not just for year-round practices, but year-round games, evening games when, you know, in the fall and the winter when the lighting is gone. Indoor access for toddlers, so a place for kids to go during inclement weather. Teen center, additional indoor courts and recreation space as well. And then from the NRPA standards that I just showed you, another community center, a senior center, and performance center. So part of our analysis and research was also to conduct a level of service analysis. So a level of service analysis is intended to take a bird's eye perspective of the community. The first thing that we did was we classified all of the sites that are in our study based on the NRPA definitions of a site. So there's a community park. Community park is your largest park. It serves the biggest component of the community. You know, it typically has 2 to 3 different types of fields. It may have a playground. It has multi-use. It's more multi-generational. The next level is neighborhood parks, and neighborhood parks are more concentrated, serving a half-mile radius from around them. So the residential areas within that half-mile radius. They're smaller facilities, and they may have maybe just one field and one playground, or maybe a talking path and things like that. And then we have and those are neighborhood parks are in red up here, kind of orange. Community parks are in green and the chartreuse green color. And then all of the sites are in yellow. We also have other sites and features recognizing that there are conservation lands. There are other parcels in the community that are recreational amenities that the city does not own. So we have local and state conservation areas shown in the brown, golf courses, estuaries, and lakes and ponds. And then we also have the shoreline access points identified in the red dots. And I understand this is difficult to see. We have it printed on a 24 by 36 out in the galleries if you want to take a look at it again. So essentially what you do is this is a GIS platform, so it's digital mapping. We took all the parcels of the community and we identified and coded all the sites that we're looking at. And that gave us the opportunity to color code these. And then we take, for a community park, we take a 2-mile offset radius, which is in the green, from the center of the site. And that shows the capture area for that community park. So it's a 2-mile radius. For neighborhood parks, we do a half-mile radius from the center as well. And then that shows what that capture area is for the residential component. So taking a look from the bird's eye perspective, you can see that the majority of most of the community is equitably served by recreational amenities or facilities. So our recommendation would be to utilize this level of service analysis performed as part of this study as a planning tool to inform future siting and future investments for additional facilities. The nice thing about this is now that this is designed and developed, this will come over to the city and they'll be able to utilize this as a planning tool. So the nice thing about a level of service analysis is in the GIS platform, you can open up an attribute table, which is essentially an Excel table. You can identify all the soccer fields. And from that, once you identify those and highlight them, they'll show up on your screen and you can see where they're strategically located. So if the city has decided to invest in a new soccer field and you want to know where you should be looking and where to conduct that feasibility study, that will tell you where you might want to locate that. You don't ever want to have all of your sites, grouped into one section of town, because that's the first thing that people talk about in the survey is they have to go across the community to get to a site, or they have one child in a facility here and they got to go all the way up to either do a drop off or pickup. So it makes it difficult. So that's the nice thing about the level of service analysis. Do you have a question there? I thought you had a question.
Me?
No, okay. All right.
Could I ask a question?
Yes,
about that?
yep.
When you talk about a drop off or pickup, 2 miles to me suggests you're going to be driving, you could bike there, kid could ride a scooter there.
Yep.
If it's safe to do so.
Yes, and that's something that we looked at, we have connectivity, access and mobility as one of our categories as well. And one of the things that folks did talk about were enhancing and expanding trails, enhancing and expanding sidewalks. We can certainly make recommendations for people to change their mindset about how they get from point A to point B, but it really comes down to the individual, whether they want to make that walk or want to make that drive.
If it's safe. Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
On that map, in the previous one, can you show where we built the current field?
The current.
The current, the one here, right, across the way.
So we are.
So we're here, this is campus.
You say it's a deficiency, have you ever taken a field that is,
Our analysis is just based on what currently exists today. Yep. And we can certainly include any future plans that are in our report. So the other component of our analysis was to do a climate change analysis. So again, this is still a GIS level, GIS platform level study. It's just a blob of the waterfront area. So we essentially looked at NOAA's 1 foot and 3 foot rise projections for sea level rise. And you can see in the purple hatch is the 1 foot rise. And then you can see in the green hatch, which is just on the fringe of the purple, that's the 3 foot rise. There really isn't any significant difference between the 1 foot and the 3 foot at this point. So that's why I'm just showing the vulnerable recreation sites. It's the same 5 that are impacted. And again, I want to stress that this is a bird's eye perspective of sea level rise impacting recreation sites. I fully understand that I think it's Hislop Field and Atlantic Heights Playground, I believe, has a higher elevation, so you're not going to have that overwash, but you may have significant scour and erosion on the slope of that. So this is not a land topographic analysis. This is a bird's eye perspective, just looking at where these projections are happening and when. So NOAA's NOAA's lower emission scenario has a 1 foot rise by 2050. And they have a 2.5 foot rise by 2100. And again, when we did do this analysis and look closely at it, not at this scale, you can see that it's the sites that are the 5 sites that are impacted under these 2 different analyses. It's just the perimeters of the site. It's not any buildings. It's not any structures at all. It's just the perimeters of the site. So you're actually in decent shape, but it still should be utilized as a planning tool when you're looking for to site a feasibility site assessment to potentially purchase property, to construct a site, or move a site to, or make any improvements to a site that might be underwater soon. Yes.
I just wondered where Prescott Park was, because they're on that, because they're making a large investment right now in Prescott Park.
Yeah.
To build walls and all kinds of things.
Right.
And is that impacted by the 1 foot? Or the 2.5 foot interior?
I don't know what the
I mean-
current project,
But you see, well, I'm just, where the water would be, where you project the water would be.
it's on the perimeter, it's right on the waterfront. And again, it doesn't necessarily impact any structures, it's just land right now. So our next category is amenities, and essentially, we're just looking for folks to weigh in on the different types of amenities we've heard loud and clear. These are the top repetitive themes from our community surveys, our athletic facility user surveys and the public workshop. Folks want to see comfort stations and restrooms. I actually have a list. South Mill Pond area, Leary Field, Pierce Island, and Clove Field. ADA access, relating to expand ADA accessibility. A lot of folks told us that a lot of sites are not ADA accessible, or there might be ADA accessible parking with signage, but then you can't actually get to the facility itself to utilize it and have the same experience as an able-bodied individual. So there's no path. There may not be a concrete platform, have a baseball field, so that you can sit with your family and have that same experience. Incorporating more picnic areas in the sites, looking at parking, and then looking at seating, bleachers and benches. Our coordination interviews discuss fencing around fields and playground sites. Pine Tree Playground is in need of fencing, and the South Mill Pond area as well. Our next category is maintenance and stewardship. Our overarching goal is just developing a maintenance plan and establishing partnerships with community members. There's never enough time, enough staff, enough money to keep these sites up and running. So part of our public outreach, a repetitive theme was a lot of people talked about field maintenance and conditions could be improved. A lot of people talked about spending the time and the money and the personnel on maintaining or upgrading what you already have before you start doing something new. And that's important to note. Our coordination meetings and interviews, with the Parks and Greenery Department, as well as with the school facilities director, that there's a need for additional personnel. National Recreation and Parks Association does have standards, median nationwide standards for personnel for maintenance. I believe the number was at 25 for this community in our spreadsheet. So we took all the staff that work in Tom's department and Parks and Recreation. We took the folks that work in Parks and Greenery and the folks that work in the school facilities that focus their efforts on maintaining and improving park and recreation sites. It's not a perfect, and it showed that we're right at 25. It's not a perfect calculation because you have to keep in mind that there are a lot of there's only a certain number of folks in Todd's department that work full-time, 5 days a week, 12 months a year. There are a number that work part-time. There are a number that work in Parks and Greenery that also work in school districts. They may only work, they might have 2 staff that work 5 months a year cutting grass, but then they do other things throughout the rest of the year. So we try to come close and justify our calculations as much as possible, but again, there's never enough time and personnel and money to keep up sites. We talked about establishing memorandums of agreement or memorandums of understanding with the various sports leagues and organizations there regarding what they do for stewardship. So a lot of these different leagues and organizations perform maintenance and upkeep of the sites that they utilize. And it's really because it's an as-needed basis. It's not anything that's formalized. It's not anything that's standardized as far as what the different best practices that they should be doing. So no one is really doing the same thing. So we really need to be a little bit more consistent on the approach. And we need to have a better understanding about who is responsible for what as far as maintenance and upkeep. Supporting the master plan's recommendations, that was to establish with community organizations and schools, offering a stewardship program, maybe adopt a spot so that other folks in the community can help maintain some of these sites. And then also identifying and encouraging efficiencies for quickly crossover, Parks and Greenery Department and the school facilities have identified that in the past, they've shared equipment, they've shared personnel to their advantage and to continue to be able to utilize those shared opportunities. Connectivity and mobility. So overarching goal is biking, enhancing and expanding walking and biking trails and looking at access throughout the community. So it gets to that piece about sidewalks and connectivity and safety. So enhancing walking and biking trails, perhaps by doing a walk audit. Improving the rail and bike trail and mountain bike trails, again, perhaps through a bike audit to identify where those things could be expanded and where those things can happen, or what the connectivity and highest and best use might be. A lot of folks in the survey talked about revisiting the Middle Street bike lane removal, as they were concerned about that. They thought that was a good option. ADA accessible improvements throughout the city. Again, a site does not have to be fully ADA compliant, but the city should be making efforts to have more, if it's a playground, there should be at least 1 or 2 elements that are ADA accessible. There needs to be a ADA approved path in order to get to that. There needs to be a parking space with signage for that. So not every single site has to be fully ADA accessible, but the city should be working towards implementing these small wins. And then connectivity to sites via sidewalks, expanding sidewalks, making sure they're safe, making sure there are crosswalks, making sure there are signals at busy intersections. A lot of folks talked about sidewalks as an issue in the community. And if they are provided, maybe they will get out of their cars and they will walk. They might allow their kids to ride a bike to get to those sites. Support the city's open space and open space plan recommendations. So open space plan has various trails and segments identified. Again, looking at all the existing municipal documents so that there's consistency across all those planning documents. And then also supporting the city's master plan recommendations as well. Again, making sure that there's consistency across your planning documents. So what's next is our gallery and vision boards. We'll do Q&A first, but I guess we can wait on this. I can take Q&A first. Yes, ma'am.
Talking about how transportation, you've talked a little bit about transportation. I was thinking about the collaboration with the housing authority and how getting from some of our further housing authorities to some of our more to our facilities was really challenging. Not as much as the money as just getting there, and what is recommendation or the thought that has that played a role at all?
So we haven't thought about that and presented that yet. When we do, we don't have any recommendations that are specific to sites, or so that'll be included in the draft and final report. That will definitely be something that we look at as far as if we're proposing that we want to provide additional access for youth and families from those areas. We will certainly identify what those barriers might be, and cost being first, and transportation, I'm sure it plays a big role. Other questions from folks? Yes,
I just have more of a comment. Just from what I've heard, it sounds like it's always the housing authority that's correlated with the need for like financial assistance, but just a point of clarification, there could be, I mean, there are other families, not just.
yes,
housing.
scholarships in general, but some folks called out the housing authority specifically in the survey, and there were a number of them that called that out. So I think that we're looking at scholarships across the community, but also with the youth and the families from the housing authority.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
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 So back in 2010, our recreation needs study actually, one of the final reports was saying that the city should have a centralized recreation complex. But you earlier were saying that not having all of your fields or locations in one spot is probably not good. So is that just something that's changed over the course of 10 years, or is that maybe just depends on, the city?
I think it has a lot of factors. I don't think it's necessarily changed, but I think it has to do with property values and where the city can invest realistically, financially. Having a centralized complex is also beneficial if that's what the community wants. When I was showing the level of service analysis and I was saying that it should be used as a planning tool to identify, I think that that's more looking at single use sites. If you can have, soccer, lacrosse, football field, You might not want to have it next to your existing one, you might want to have it on the other side of the city. So, you know, having a centralized community center, a multi-sport complex is perfectly acceptable and typically the norm today. Especially if you can also correlate that with sidewalk connections, with transportation and things like that. So there's a lot of different factors that go into feasibility. And that's why you hire firms to do feasibility studies of that, because they look at all those, they look at traffic patterns, they look at safety, sidewalks and things like that. Yes.
Just to add to the comment about transportation, I think it's important to consider transportation, not just for housing authority sites, but to service the entire community as well, to get to these facilities. So when considering that, I think we should be an inclusive kind of approach to that, not just selectively certain communities should be provided with transportation accessibility versus the rest of the community is not.
Right. And the age friendly survey assessment that was completed by Rockingham Planning Commission mentioned seniors are interested in learning more about and having more opportunities for transportation services as they age in place, not being able to drive or not being able to have a vehicle. So yes. Yes, sir.
Could you explain the process moving forward and how all of the, you know, work that you guys have done informs the city and what the city does to actually make some of this happen?
So we will, a lot of the data collection and information that we've done will be provided in the appendices. We'll certainly incorporate some of that into the actual body of the report. But most of these will have recommendations with the start of what I showed you tonight, and you'll see on the boards. But we'll be expanding those as well. And we will likely have at the end of the study of the report, we will probably have an implementation table that looks at all these different categories and the different goals, actions, and objectives. And looking at, you know, what they're intended to meet. So I think that that's the way. We haven't really solidified that yet. We have tried to be consistent in our approach as far as community engagement and our research and data collection as far as the categories go, so that it's kind of naturally evolves into a final report.
Is there a timeline for when you guys?
So we hope to have our analysis phase done by December and then start working on the report in January.
Do you step away after the report or do you continue to work with the city?
Once we have the final report and we present that to the city, I think we're done. You know, we will certainly try to include in that report some funding mechanisms, some timelines and things like that. But I do believe we're done after that. Yes, sir.
The slides you had tonight, are they going to be available on the recreation website?
Yes, so the PowerPoint presentation, this presentation tonight is being videotaped or taped, and we will post this to the project webpage tomorrow morning. All the boards in the gallery that you're going to be visiting and providing feedback and input on will be posted downstairs in the lobby for the next week. So again, we're encouraging people to, if you didn't come to the presentation, watch the presentation on the project webpage and then come to the center and weigh in on the boards.
I'm thinking about the recreation department website. Is this going to be on that?
There'll be a link.
Yes, we have a project webpage on the Parks and Rec department, yes, hosted on the city's website.
The quickest way that you can actually direct anyone, this is gonna go straight to the city's YouTube channel tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And then it'll probably eventually get up to the website at some point tomorrow, but it should go right up to the city's YouTube channel right away.
The city. I didn't see it.
The city of Portsmouth has a YouTube channel. You can find it right from the city's homepage and stuff, or you can search it, City of Portsmouth.
It's where the.
I'm serious. Not everybody does it. And that's the way we communicate in total now. That's
Well, Jackie, that's just the platform for where the video is gonna be. So you'll be able to go to the website and find it, but that's the platform where it's gonna be. I'm saying the quickest access to it is if you go directly to the YouTube channel.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering, I know in the presentation of
talk about preschool, like recreation for preschool.
Yes.
Seniors
Yes.
and adults, but
Yes.
I really didn't hear much about teenagers.
Mhm.
You know, 13, except for the teen center, which I'm still unsure where that is.
So it's kind of being.
Is that even open in the summer?
Not in the summer.
Right, so.
It's also not.
That's the point.
Yeah, no mention of.
So,
So the reason why you saw the items of toddlers and senior citizens and disabled individuals is because those were recurrent themes that we heard during the surveys as well as the public workshop that we had. So what we did was, we've already asked folks to weigh in on what programs are missing or are needed or desired. And then we took, from all of our collection efforts, we took the top 5 or 6 from each of those and included those in this presentation today and on the boards in the gallery. So we want you to kind of drill down a little bit more details for us.
so nobody mentioned that age group.
Not in the top, they weren't prioritized as the top needs.
Okay. So no studies were done, or the need.
Well, there was nothing returned to us from the community about the need for teen programming. In the boards, in the gallery session, we have, I'll talk about that now, just to not duplicate myself. So there are 3 different types of boards. Each of the categories that we talked about tonight are out there. There are boards that look like this, and this is what we want you to weigh in on. So you're gonna get, there's gonna be dots in an envelope at the bottom, and you will tell us what your top 2 priorities are. We prefer that people don't stack their votes, but we really can't control that, especially when the boards are gonna be here for a week and kind of unmanned. So this is what we're looking at for prioritization of the different amenities that what we heard from the general public over the course of 6 to 8 months. Then there's a second type of board that just has the recommendations that we identified based on what we heard from all of our engagement opportunities. This is what we want folks to take there. Instead of sticky dots, there will be Post-it notes. And we want you to respond. Do these sound good? And again, these are preliminary findings. These are not our final findings, but just looking at what we've completed so far, we had to identify some preliminary findings. We're asking folks to tell us what's missing or what could be improved either from these or what's missing in general. So when you can certainly do that for the amenities as far as programming for teens. But then there's also a 3rd type of board, and there will be staff at these boards to kind of guide you through this. It will have prioritization, so we're asking you to identify your top 2 on the top ones where the boxes are, and it also has the preliminary recommendations. And then throughout the gallery, there are participant comment sheets, so it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper where we're asking you, if you don't see something here that is important to you and hasn't risen to the top, please write it down. It's all you have to do is fill it in. And you circle the category that you're speaking to, whether it's amenities or information communications, and then tell us what's missing or tell us what's needed. And then turn that into one of the folks that are manning the stations, and we'll be summarizing all that information and taking those into consideration. So we've already done our first kind of swap of what's needed, what's important, what's missing. And now we presented what those priorities were from all those different efforts, and now we're asking you to confirm what the city should focus on as their priorities for the next 10 years. Yes.
So can I just clarify, is this priorities for the city or the city rec department? Because I'm noticing a lot of people are gonna laugh, but there are a lot of city departments that are not been included, it seems, in some of the programming and things like that, amenities. So that seems different to me, what the rec should be doing moving forward versus what the city should.
So most likely it will be the Parks and Recreation Department making proposals to the city for improvements or for lane acquisitions or building acquisitions. So what should Parks and Recreation look like in the future? What are the priorities for Parks and Recreation based on looking at the national standards for the national median standards for the benchmark? Looking at what we heard from people Because, you know, Todd and his department can go to the city and make requests for all these different things. But if we can't show and back it up with data, that this is what the city wants based on this project or any other projects that might build off of it, that's really the critical component of it. So that's why we're asking you all to either weigh in on the recommendations or weigh in on what the priorities should be. We also have one more board out there. We have our vision board, and this will not be staffed. So essentially, we are asking you all to give us information to help craft a vision for the recreational needs study. It can either be one word, it could be a couple of words, it could be a fully crafted vision statement, like the vision of Portsmouth recreational needs analysis is to foster a healthy, active, and engaged community. So we've just included a couple of terms that, you know, just to give you a generalized statement. Essentially, what we want you to do is provide a word or two that's reflective of the core values that should be included into the recreational needs analysis vision statement. And that has pens and Post-its, and you can certainly write those comments if you want to spend the time to craft out a full vision statement for us, then you can certainly put that on the. Any other questions?
Okay, can I say one thing too?
Yes.
And you know, after all of that, we go through about the vision boards and all the other stuff too. If you guys don't want my contact info, I can go put my card out too. I'm always welcome to get emails, to get comments about what, you know, what you want to see and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be through this method, right? So just, you know, do what you need to do here, but then also feel free, my door is always open, my office is downstairs, so just as a FYI.
So again, as I mentioned, the presentation will be posted tomorrow to the project webpage, also on the YouTube, city's YouTube channel. Boards will be downstairs up until Wednesday of next week. So normal business hours, come visit, send your family, send your friends, and your neighbors to come weigh in. The whole point of us leaving the boards here for a week is to get as much input as we can as possible. Not everybody is interested in coming to public meetings, not everybody can come to public. So. This is the project webpage on the Recreation Department's link. Again, it has a project team here, it has the Recreation Board members, and then some general information about the project. This is the actual link right there to the project webpage. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a budget figure for all of this? I mean, we working with a figure?
As far as necessary improvements,
Yeah, I mean, how much would all of this cost? We did this-
we have not. And I don't believe we're going to be working on developing a budget for that because it really depends on what the priorities and the capacity of the city is based on the findings from this. So, you know, that would be a feasibility study to look at if the city decides that they want to purchase a new soccer field. That would then be a feasibility study where you would most likely hire a consultant to do that, to identify as far as real estate. And then what the placement of that, but utilizing our study to inform the location, the feasibility of that. And it all depends on when it's, we can see as a result of the pandemic, building costs has significantly skyrocketed. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 10 years that might impact either. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, what was the number of responses you had for the first study?
So the community survey?
Yeah.
I think we had over 300, maybe 324, 27. Community, that was the general survey that went out. And then we also did a targeted survey to sports facility users, the coaches, administrators, and support staff. Anything else? So you're welcome to move on to the gallery. We won't necessarily bring folks back at the end, so if you want to visit the gallery, talk to the staff person, talk to Todd, get your questions answered, and then you're free to move on. Thank you all for coming tonight. Really appreciate your attendance here tonight, your participation. And please tell your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers to come visit the website, visit the gallery. Thank you.